Welcome everybody to today's Torah study, the first one of the fall 2016 semester. Today we'll be talking about beyond the letter of the law. And on the poster we wrote ethics, or ethical behavior beyond the letter of the law. And that is, what I'd like to talk to you about is, in the Jewish tradition and everywhere, it's very important that we don't just do what is right, what it says. We don't just follow the letter of the law, because the letter of the law can't encompass everything that needs to be done. So I want to go through a few sources and a few ideas, so to broaden the picture of what it means and the sources for going beyond the letter of the law. Then end off possibly with a nice lesson. A week and a half from today, we'll be celebrating the new year, and it's always good before the new year to try to make ourselves a little better. And if I may put a plug in, a week from today is also Jill's Rosh Hashanah event in the FCR. So again, you're all invited to that as well. It won't be as educational, but it will be a nice event. Okay, so I hope to see you all there. So we're going to start. You should have page 1. Page 1 is a quote from starts with a quote from Exodus. It's a quote from Exodus 18. What happened in the story in the book of Exodus was the Jewish people were in the desert having left Egypt, and Moses' father-in-law, whose name was Yitro, came to the Jewish people in the desert, and he saw his son-in-law, Moses, was working too hard because he was judging people all day. So he said, "Listen to me, I will give you counsel and God be with you. You represent the people before God and bring the disputes before God, and enjoin upon them the laws and the teachings, and make known to them the way they are to go and the practices they are to follow." So he says two things. Tell them the way they are to go and the practices they are to follow. So whenever we deal with a biblical verse, we try to figure out whenever there's a redundancy, whether there's ever extra you repeat it. You don't just. It's not only poetic. What are the two things? The way they are to go and the practices they are to follow. So that's source number 1. Then we're gonna. Should we skip down? Let's skip down. I'll skip down. You see where it says TB? TB stands for Talmud Babel, or Babylonian Talmud. Bav Metzia 30b. It's a fourth source. Not the next one. The fourth source. Rabbi Ishmael, son of Rabbi Yossi, was walking on a road when he met a man carrying a load of figs. The latter put them down, rested, and then said, "Please help me pick them up." So he said, "What is it worth?" He said, "They're worth a half a zuz." So he said, I can't help you." Rabbi Ishmael was an old man; couldn't really help him. Then I'll pay you how much they're worth. So he gave him half a zuz. So he gave him half a zuz. Now this guy, this porter, was a real shrewd guy. So what did he do? He said he took the money. So really, Rabbi Ishmael bought the figs. And that was a way he gave him the money, so the guy wouldn't have to work hard. He picked the figs back up, and he says, "Okay, now they're mine again. Help me again." And he kept playing Rabbi Ishmael. So the Talmud deals with that. How does that work? But then the Talmud has an interesting question. I'm skipping after the 3 dots. Yet was not Rabbi Ishmael, son of Rabbi Yossi, an elder for whom it is undignified to help one take a load? And the answer is he acted beyond the requirement of the law. So here we have the first concept that there's the law. There are some times that you are not obligated. You're not. If you're an elder, you're an older person, you are not asked to do more than you can do. Yet Rabbi Ishmael went beyond the letter of the law. He went further. And then he says, where did I learn this from? So he took that verse we just did in Exodus, and he explained it. "And that shall show them," this refers to their house of life. The way, that means the practice of loving deeds. They must walk to visit the sick, therein to burial, and the work to strict law, and they shall do to act beyond the requirements of the law. So, going back to our first source, and the underline words, make them know the way they are to go and the practice they are to follow. The redundancy teaches us that there's the law, and there's beyond the letter of the law. And that the beyond the letter of the law is also, you're supposed to have something to do. So now, there's an overriding question. If there's something you're to do, then it's law. And if it's beyond the letter of the law, it means you don't have to do it. So it's like an oxymoron. On one hand, we say, There's the law. This is what you have to do. There's beyond the letter of the law. You don't have to do it, but you have to do beyond the letter of the law. Then it becomes law. So it's circular logic. But by the Torah, the Bible saying both, it seems to say that there are two separate things. You're sort of obligated in both, but one's beyond the letter of the law. Now, that's the overriding question. But now the Talmud, go back to the first source, says a very far-reaching thing and a very interesting thing. For Rabbi Yochanan said, Jerusalem was destroyed only because they gave judgments in accordance with the biblical law. Now, whenever you find in the Talmud that, I'm back to the second source. I went up. I'm sorry. So, whenever you see, whenever the Talmud mentions Jerusalem was destroyed, that is a way of saying that's the worst thing. Because again, one of the worst tragedies of that in the Jewish tradition was the destruction of the two temples. So whenever you say this action caused the temple destruction, you're really saying that's a bad thing. That's a way of saying that's bad. So it says, Rabbi Yochanan said, Jerusalem was destroyed because they gave judgments in accordance with the law. So then, were they then to be judged in accordance with untrained arbitrators? No offense, Shira, for the arbitrating committee, right? But rather the Talmud says, say this, because they based their judgments strictly upon biblical law and did not go beyond the requirements of the law. So here the Talmud makes a very strong statement, which is that Jerusalem was destroyed, meaning the temple was destroyed, meaning really bad sin, because they followed the letter of the law and didn't go beyond the letter of the law. So I thought about what could be the first topic for this semester, and again, as I said, we're a week and a half before the Jewish New Year, Rosh Hashanah. The question of how we deal with the letter of the law versus beyond the letter of the law, and going beyond, and feeling obligated and feeling guilty, because that's what the Talmud does here, is like, if you just follow the law, you think you're a good person. No, you caused the temple to be destroyed. Like a real Jewish guilt, that's how we throw it at you. So what's going on? So I wanted to just give you another example of this concept that we find in the Talmud. So I'm going to skip where it says. Let's not skip. It says Deuteronomy 6:18. It says, "Do what is straight and good in the sight of the Lord." So here you have straight and good. Straight means what's straight? You follow the letter of the law, the line of the law. Good means sometimes you can't just follow the letter of the law because it's not good, and we'll see why in a second. So the Torah, again, in another place in the Bible, says the same thing. Go beyond the letter of the law. So, there's a few cases that I just brought just to bring out the point. It's interesting, and you guys know a lot more about American law than I do, and I would like to hear what your take is a little bit on these cases, or especially from the professors who know so much. So we'll look at Maimonides' laws of neighbors. So the laws of neighbors is very interesting. When a person, it's a very interesting Jewish law that when a person sells a property, so if let's say I own a piece of land, and Brett's my neighbor, so I sell my land to Eric. Brett can come along and automatically give Eric the money and say it's mine. Brett has first right? Not only has first right, even after I finish the sale with Eric, he can then go ahead and still say, listen, he can't make Eric lose money, but he'll say, Eric, how much did you pay? $100? Here's $100, it's now mine. And he could force that. Where does that come from? This practice stems from the charge in Deuteronomy, and you shall do what is just and good. Our sages say, since the sale is fundamentally the same, to me, it is just and good that the property should be acquired by the neighbor instead of the person living further away. So what the Talmud and Maimonides codifies here is that I, the seller, should be. I can sell to whoever I want, but I have to do what's right. And what's right is that the neighbor has first right of refusal or first right of buying. So much so, even if after I didn't do what's right, he can go ahead and in a way take it. So you might think that's not fair. It's not fair to Eric. But the answer is that I have to do what's right and good for you. Now Maimonides continues on. The following rules apply whenever a person wants to sell landed property and two people coming offering to purchase it. And each one is willing to pay the same price. And neither of them is a neighbor, because again, neighbor goes first. If one of the prospective purchasers was an inhabitant of the city and the other dwelled in the fields, the inhabitant gets priority. If one of them lives close to the property, the other's a Torah scholar, the Torah scholar is given priority. If one's a relative and the other is a Torah scholar, the Torah scholar is given priority. If one is a relative and the other one lives close, the one who lives close gets given priority. For this is an act of good and justice. In any of the above situations, if the other person acted first and acquired their property, his colleague does not have the right to displace him. So here you see that there's two types of beyond the letter of the law. First one is an actual neighbor. He has the right to, in a way, nullify or take the sale away from the person I sold it to. But when there's priority, there is a list of priorities: Torah scholars, city resident, someone who lives close, or someone who lives close. Then I should, but if I don't, I can't do anything about it. So here you see that built into law. Now I don't believe there would be something like that in comparative in American law, that you can take a sale away because you have first right. You correct me if I'm wrong. Am I wrong?
If you have a right, then you've got to make it available.
What do you mean?
If you have a right to buy property, you have a right. You have a right, an option to buy property, then you have that right.
So you can, and even if the sale's done, I can go ahead and take it?
Yes, because you have a right. Yes, you've registered the right, and you have a right.
So the neighbor's rights are. So when
secondary.
No, the neighbor who gets to take it.
No, but
Michael is a property guy.
I'm not speaking as a property guy, and it's my capacity as a property guy, but the right, an option to buy is not something that's conferred as a right of social status. It's not because you're a neighbor, a social scholar, or whatever. It's something you contract for.
Yeah.
Right.
You have to buy it.
So here you have it automatically.
Right.
Here, by being a neighbor or a Torah scholar, by neighbor for sure, you get to have the right, and you have the right to go afterwards and get it.
Yeah.
So that's I don't believe that would be automatic.
No.
So that's an interesting thing, and yeah.
I just have a question. Is that only in regard to people who are willing to pay the same price?
Yeah. Well, yes. You can't cause me a loss.
Okay.
So.
If he lives closer, but I'm going to give you more money, then.
But I have the right to make as much money as possible, but then he has the right to. In other words, we make a deal, $100, and I knew he was only going to give me 80. So then, you bought it. As long as he's willing to give you the 100, then we're all good, or me the 100. Either way, if he's only he's willing to pay 80, then So that's interesting, and you see here that there's two levels. There's a neighbor who you have to who has that right; he can take it away, and then there's a set of priorities which we're supposed to do. But if you don't do it, it's not actionable, as you'd say. Okay, now this is another interesting case. The second case here on page 2. Some porters negligently broke a barrel of wine. So you hired someone; they were supposed to carry wine for you, and they were negligent and they broke it. So obviously you could have them pay you back, right? Sue them. Thereupon, Rabbah seized their garments. So then, not only did he sue them, but he knew that they don't have any money or anything. So he took their garments as a way of protecting himself or recouping his loss. So they went and complained to Rabbah's rabbi, right? And he said, return the garments to them. And he asked his rabbi, is that the law? He said, no, really, even so. Thou, right? You should walk in the ways of good men. You should be a good person. You'd be a good person. So you really shouldn't have taken their garments. They're poor people. You shouldn't have done it. It's not right. You probably are owed the money. It's not right. Their garments returned. These porters, having a lot of what we call chutzpah, they went to him and said, we are poor men. We worked all day. You got to pay us for our work. Now that's the height of chutzpah, right? Really, they owe him money. And he took their garment and he gave it back because he's a nice guy. But now they went in the ultimate chutzpah and they said, pay us our wages. And he said, and his rabbi said, go and pay them. So is that the law? He said, even so. Keep the path of the righteous. So here we have an unbelievable case. This is really one of the paradigm of the case. Here you have a person, Rabbah, who hired workers who were negligent, who caused him a loss. He went ahead and took their garments to recoup his loss. The rabbi said, come on, don't take their garments. And not only that, go pay them for their work, which they caused you a loss. That sounds crazy. And on that we say here we have to go beyond the letter of the law. Go beyond the letter of the law. So here you have instituted. Now, if you take a look at the bottom, everything a lot of the sources today are in English, and it's very easily. But a lot of the medieval commentators' works have not been translated into English. So I just summarized in the bottom. So the Rosh, who was a Ashkenazi rabbi who moved to Spain in the 1300s, he holds that even though the rabbi told Rabbah return it, and pay them, that the workers couldn't go to court to demand that he act in that manner. On the other hand, the Tosafists, who were pure Ashkenazi, that means they resided in what we call Franco-Germany, France, Germany, they held the action can be compelled. That means that the workers can sue the guy who hired them to pay them wages he doesn't owe them. They could demand that he act in a way that's beyond the letter of the law. Does that make sense? No. So what do you think? Professor Rafel, you've been very silent.
It sure didn't make sense to me.
It shouldn't make sense.
It makes sense to me because they're two separate issues.
Two separate issues, right?
If you want to get paid for the oil, you have to take actions against the porters to get. They're not going to have very deep pockets,
Right.
unfortunately. But stealing their clothes, taking their coats, that wasn't part of the original agreement. As far as getting paid for the work, they did the work, they did it poorly. But you can't decide for yourself that it wasn't done well, so I'm going to keep.
But they owe you money.
They owe you money, but.
So why should I pay them if they owe me?
Because they did the work.
Even though it's two, so you don't make that.
I see it two separate issues. That's the way I see it. But that's not my area of the law, but.
But right. So here the rabbi says it is beyond the letter of the law. But on the other hand, that's what, and according to some of the medieval commentators, you could sue for that. On the other hand, some say it's what you're supposed to do, but you can't really go to court and ask someone to go beyond the letter of the law. And then the last case, yes, sir.
So if it becomes the letter of law, if it's beyond the letter of law and we say you're still obligated to do it, it becomes the letter of the law.
Right, it goes back to our original dichotomy.
Right.
Original dichotomy. You have beyond the letter of the law, which is letter of the law. But it's still called beyond the letter of the law.
So the next thing is, supposing that these porters decide that they're hungry.
Right.
Do they have to be given the food as well?
Yeah. It depends on the. But the assumption is in Talmudic laws that he owes him a meal.
Okay, so
That's the assumption. I guess you can contract out or contract in,
Right.
but I'm saying, but the assumption is that you owe them, let's say, a meal or food for the day.
Okay, so
Yeah.
so this is endless, this process.
Yeah. Yes.
All right.
Yes. So that's why you have many times in Talmudic law and that when you hire someone, you've acquired a boss. Right. Yeah. And here it's taken quite literally. And just do one more case. Again, this is from another Talmud Bavli, above Batra 12b. A certain man bought a field adjacent to the estate of his father-in-law. When they came to, then the father-in-law obviously died, and they came to divide up the estate. So, amongst all the children. When they came to divide the latter's estate, the guy who owned the field adjacent to one of the fields said, okay, give me my share next to my own field. Right? He said, come on, do me a favor. Rabbah said this is the case where a man can be compelled not to act in the manner of Sodom. So you've heard of Sodom and Gomorrah, right? You've all heard of that, right? The quintessential bad people who were not nice to anyone else. So if you, the other siblings, inheritors, don't accede to this request, you are almost the worst thing you can be. You are those people from Sodom. Rabbi Joseph strongly objected to this, on the ground that the brothers could say to him, we reckon this field is especially valuable, like the property of the family of Mar Marion. It's a good field. So seemingly Rabbah and Rabbi Yosef are arguing on a case where that field is not like equal to all the other fields. There is an advantage to having that field. And this guy wants it because it's instead of having separate fields, he can make one big field. And that's in a way, it's obviously everything today you can give value to, but it's an intangible benefit. Today, I guess that's a little bit different than in the times of the Talmud. We have monetized everything. How much is it worth to you, X, Y, and Z? But it sometimes in the eyes of the Talmud, not everything was the economic theory that we have today. It's more like that's an intangible benefit. Having two fields next to each other where you don't have to work as hard. Yeah, of course, we know how to monetize that, how much you have to pay workers and everything. We figured it out. But at the time of Talmud, that was considered like a side benefit. So they're like, do the guy a favor and let him have his fields next to the other, one on the other. And here we have, and again, the field is better. Seemingly, they can object that it's, so again, you have, and now Rabbah holds, you call the person who doesn't do a guy a favor, even though there's a good reason that you're like from Sodom. You're like really bad. What do you think, Professor? You're shaking your head.
No, I think that if the other brothers and sisters had decided, let's give him his share, for his share, let's give him the piece next to his property, that would be a nice thing.
Right. It would be.
I don't think the opposite of nice is necessarily mean.
And so again, here you have a nice thing sort of being part of requirement. You be nice. We should be nice, but just because we're not nice doesn't mean we're mean.
We're evil.
We're evil, right? And here it sounds like Rabbah said you force it, you compel them.
And the fact is, if you believe in law and economics, the marketplace will allow you to gain an advantage. How much can I give you
Right.
to give me this piece?
Correct. How much is everything? You could boil everything down to how much.
I'm not opposed to that.
Okay, so the Talmud seems to disagree.
Yeah.
Now listen, we'll sum it up. Of course, always.
You may change your mind. I think we have to spell out the economics behind these rules, at least a part of the story of the economics. And that is, what's the advantage of having a plot of land that's next to yours in an agricultural society?
It makes your life
In what
easier.
respect is it cheaper? In what respect is it cheaper? And it's in the respect that if you have animals, for example, plowing your field.
Less work on the animals, less work on the workers.
Plus, you don't have to cross anybody else's field.
Correct.
And if you don't have to cross their fields, you don't have to pay them to cross their fields.
All good and true.
All kinds of tourists come from crossing the field. So that's the economics behind the idea of being able to get the parcel next to yours.
I got that.
No, I'm not.
Yeah.
I just want to get clear.
Oh, yeah, I think, yeah. So listen to this. This is from there's one ethical part of the oral law. It's called the Mishnah and Avot. Avot means our fathers, forefathers. So it's called, many times called the ethics of our fathers. And in chapter 5 it says there are 4 types of people. One who says what's mine is yours and what's yours is mine. That sounds a little bit, we'd call that communistic, maybe. Like, what's mine is yours, what's yours is mine. Whatever word you want to give it. The Mishnah labels that a boor. A boor is like a uneducated fellow. So we could talk about that some other time when we talk about political theories. We're not going to talk about that now. One who says what's mine is mine and what's yours is yours, that's a medium characteristic. That's what I would say, right? Yours is yours, what's mine is mine, right? I don't infringe on you, you don't infringe on me, we're all good. Others say this is the character of a sodomite. That someone who says what's yours is yours, what's mine is mine, and we're just the letter of the law, right? That's it, that's the worst. We'll finish up with one who says what is mine is yours and what is yours is a pious person, and obviously the one who says what is mine and what yours is mine is a wicked person. That goes without saying. So but the second one, the person who says what's mine is mine and what's yours is either a regular middle of the road guy or the worst person ever. And so here you have, and you know, that's what, I mean, I was trying to build up to this, that when you look at the sources, following the letter of the law doesn't seem to be advocated so much in the Talmud. So I would like to read the last source. That I didn't give these out yet. Could you hand these out this way? No, good. Hand these out this way. And I'm going to hand these out this way. And there's and I think this it's a lot of food for thought. And maybe the professors or the students will help me out here. So in Leviticus chapter 19 verse 2. It says, speak to the whole community of Israelites, say to them, you shall be holy, for I, the Lord your God, am holy. Is there enough? That is a famous statement that God says to the Jewish people, the Torah, right? You be holy because I am holy. That means our actions, we emulate God. So Nachmanides was a 13th century Spanish rabbi, very famous Spanish rabbi. He has a commentary to all of the Torah, and he has a commentary to this piece in Leviticus. So he doesn't want to just say, okay, holy. Yeah, I know what holy is. You know what holy is. Okay, he wants to know, what does it mean to be holy? Why? As we know, the Torah gave lots of laws. What is this extra, be holy, like a general principle? According to my opinion, I'm quoting here, the separation. So he understands separation here being holiness as being part of separation, partially, is the one mentioned in every place in the Talmud, where the practitioners are called those who have separated themselves, pirushim. And the manner is that the Torah prohibited sexual transgressions and forbidden foods, and permitted sexual relations with husband and wife, and the eating of meat and the drinking of wine. If so, a desirous person will find a place to be lustful with his wife or his many wives, according to biblical law, or to be among the guzzlers of wine and the gluttons of meat. He will speak as he pleases about all the vulgarities, the prohibitions of which is not mentioned in the Torah. So, I always ask my students, I said, are you allowed to get drunk every night? Yes. Nowhere in the Bible, I know it's one of the cardinal sins, but it's not in the Bible. If you look at the Bible, there is nothing against getting drunk and having every night a huge steak, right? There's nothing, there's nowhere, and he says using and vulgarities. There's nowhere, right? There's nowhere, you could read through the 5 books of Moses, fine-tooth comb, you could read the 19, or the books of the prophets, nowhere does it say don't get drunk. Nowhere does it say don't pig out. It doesn't say it anywhere. So God said, you know what, I'm going to add one general verse. Be holy. Whatever you think, whatever is included to be holy, that's what I meant. And behold, you will be a scoundrel with permission of the Torah. That means you would make the thing, you could, within the letter of the law, you're good. And you'd be not the greatest person out there. So the Torah gives us that one verse, be holy. One verse. And this came after it specified the prohibitions, it commanded a more general rule. That we should be separated from the indulgences of those things that are permissible. Now Nachmanides takes it a step further. And that is the way of the Torah. To state the particulars and then the general rules. And similar to this, when after the prohibition of specific law of trade, do not steal, do not burglarize, do not deceive, and all the other prohibitions, it states, and you shall do the straight and the good. So that it places into a positive commandment, uprightness, compromise, and going beyond the letter of the law toward the will of his friend. So here, this is like the summation of what of the beginning of the thought process, and that is, there's a law, many laws, right? A lot of laws. Don't steal, don't burglarize, don't hold back wages, etc., etc. And then there is a general principle, and that general principle says, there's no way I could tell you everything, and you can't write. You can fill a library with books. You won't get every situation. You won't. And then you won't have a case which is the letter of the law. I'm giving you I'm going to tell you the basics, the details, but I'm going to give you a general principle. And I need you to understand and say, okay, now this is the law. It's not the law. It's beyond the letter of the law because it's not there. But I want you, in your uprightness and in your understanding of being holy, to make it the letter of the law. So it's very interesting. And I think this is the general principle that there's the law. And then there's beyond the letter of the law. But if you understand that's the right thing, for you it's the law. That means the law in a way is subjective. That you have to be upright. I'm giving you a general principle. In this case, if you think that's the right thing, for you have to do it. It's the law. It's not a good thing. It's not a nice thing. You have to do it because I gave you a general principle. Now, if you think no one has to do it, then fine. But if you think it's the right thing, then you have to do it. So that's the border. There was the system has a switch. That there's the law, but there's beyond the letter of the law. And if you realize that for you it's the law. So that's the answer to our dichotomy. On one hand, it is beyond the letter of the law. It's not written down. But because there's an overriding principle to be good, to be holy, and you understand it, it flips a switch, now it's the letter of the law for you. I think that's, I would love to open up to what everyone thinks about that. I don't know if that's my interpretation. That's my understanding how to answer this dichotomy. Professor.
The analogy, I think, is to the word penumbra, right? So for many years, we talked about the law and its penumbra. I think that's another way of characterizing what you're doing here. And the penumbra, the law has to be understood in the context of the penumbra, or in connection with the penumbra.
I don't know. I hear.
Okay, all right.
Yes.
It sounds like in con law, so we have like the Constitution and all the laws come from the Constitution, and some people say basically that you have to read the Constitution and what it says, and then there's another school of thought that says, well, you can't, it's how you interpret those laws based on the context and what's going on, and it sounds like that. Like
Interesting.
it gives a more
But that
overrule Torah.
that more is. I mean, I don't. You'll know better than me. But isn't that a question of how well you interpret the words versus the intent?
Well, it's like, what is the intent? Do we focus on the
Right.
intent?
So here you have it's something which is not even you won't find written, and it's a case that you have to figure out where it applies, and like the cases we had. You have a worker who you could sue for money because they messed up, they were negligent carrying your barrels of wine. And not only you shouldn't take their stuff, you should realize you should go ahead and pay them. And Professor Rafel understood that as two separate things. But I would say is that if someone owes me money, I'm not going to go ahead and pay them money. Right? I think that's what I would have said. Maybe I'm not such a nice guy. Right? But the Talmud says no. You have to go do it. And the question is, just making now, being a little, harping on the words. Was that case there? Was he telling it for everyone, or was it specific to him? Did his rabbi say, "Listen, I know you, and on your level, you have to be a nice guy"? Maybe he would have told me, "Fogel, you're okay. You don't have to do anything," because maybe you're supposed to know who you are. Okay. I thank you for joining us. That was just a basic overview and a basic trying to understand how we can approach the law and somehow, at the same time, go beyond it and be better people. And again, for those of you who will join us next week on Thursday at our event for Rosh Hashanah, I hope to see you there. And if you cannot make it, I'd like to wish you a happy and healthy New Year.
Thank you, Rabbi.
What about when the going beyond violates the local secular?
For example, Professor?
I'm sorry. Oh,
What do you mean to ask? Well, whenever it comes to monetary law and secular law are never monetary law and secular law never come in conflict. Ritual law might come in conflict with secular law, but monetary law won't come in conflict. That, when we say the law of the land is the law, dina l'malchuta dina, that always applies to monetary law. So if the way of the law of the land is in contracts and all that, then it's irrelevant. There's no, unless you contract out or you arbitrate out.
So it's primarily about
In
commerce
the Orthodox tradition, the dina l'malchuta dina is taken in a commercial sense,
I guess
in an economic sense.
and that it's not written that way, but taken in that.
Most of the times it's used in the Talmud is in that context. So that's how it's taken to be understood. Understood, yeah.
I never knew that.
Yeah. So in other words, you can't go ahead, let's say, to get divorced, which is ritual law. You can't say a civil divorce is the law of the land, therefore it's good enough. You need to get a get.
Because it's not a
Because it's not a maritary question. And the same would be getting married. Civil marriage, but when it comes to, I hire a worker, then it's automatically assumed unless you contract out. But I imagine Professor Levine would have a lot more to say about Dina l'malchuta dina. There's probably more, there's a lot more details.